The year was 2146, and New York City was shining brighter than ever. The streets were filled with people from all over the world, but they were not just humans. Tall figures with shimmering skin, creatures with crystal eyes, and beings that seemed made of light walked among the crowds. Earth was hosting the first great interstellar peace conference. It was the kind of event that would be remembered for centuries. Aaron Blake, a mid-level liaison officer, walked quickly through the grand hall of the United World Embassy. His job was to help the alien delegations find their way, answer their questions, and solve small problems before they became big ones. He was not famous or powerful, but he took pride in his work. He had studied alien cultures for years and wanted to be part of something that could change history. The Valorian delegation was one of the most talked-about groups at the conference. Valorians were tall, elegant, and known for their strong sense of pride. They wore long robes that shimmered like liquid silver, and their eyes glowed faintly in the light. The leader of the Valorian group was Ambassador Soraya. She was taller than any human in the room, her voice smooth but firm, and her presence made people step aside. Aaron had been assigned to help her with logistics. When he first approached her in the welcome hall, he smiled politely and said, "Ambassador Soraya, welcome to Earth. I am here to assist you." She did not answer. She looked past him as if he was not there and began speaking to another alien beside her. Aaron waited for her to finish, then tried again, but she simply walked away. The guards and aides who followed her moved like a wall between her and him. It was not the last time this happened. Over the next few hours, Aaron tried to speak with her several times. She ignored him every time. She would give orders to her aides, listen to other ambassadors, or walk away mid-sentence without a glance in his direction. Some of the other humans noticed. One of the security officers whispered to Aaron, "Man, she acts like you're invisible." Aaron only gave a small shrug. He knew Valorian culture valued hierarchy, and maybe in her eyes he was too low in rank to matter. The conference itself was a maze of events. Delegates met in large halls under banners that showed stars and planets from dozens of worlds. Discussions ranged from trade agreements to border disputes. There were polite smiles, sharp arguments, and quiet side deals made in corners. Aaron kept moving between rooms, making sure things stayed on schedule. Late in the afternoon, a small problem began to grow. One of the Valorian aides was struggling with a translation device. The words coming through were not matching the intended meaning. In one conversation, the device translated, "We welcome your friendship," into "We tolerate your presence." That kind of mistake could start trouble fast. Aaron stepped in quietly. He knew a few Valorian phrases from his studies. He spoke to the aide in a calm voice, fixing the settings and correcting the word choice. The aide looked relieved, and the nearby alien delegate seemed pleased, but Soraya did not notice. She was across the room, speaking with another ambassador, as if nothing had happened. As the day came to a close, Aaron found himself standing near the grand balcony, looking out at the skyline. The sun was setting, and the sky was streaked with orange and purple. Ships from other worlds floated above the city, their lights twinkling like stars. He thought about his role here. He was not a negotiator, not a commander, not a hero in the usual sense, but he could still make a difference. Maybe Soraya would never notice him, and maybe his work would stay invisible. Still, he believed in the purpose of the conference. If humans and aliens could learn to understand each other, even in small ways, it could lead to something bigger. Behind him, voices echoed from the main hall. The delegations were preparing for the evening banquet. Aaron turned away from the balcony and headed back inside. It was only the first day, and there was still a long road ahead. The second day of the conference began with a rush of movement through the embassy halls. Delegates from dozens of planets filled the rooms, each carrying their own plans and demands. The air was filled with the hum of translators and the low voices of serious talks. Aaron Blake moved quickly between meetings, making sure the human delegation's schedule was running smoothly. He carried a small tablet that displayed times, locations, and messages from other aides. He kept his head down, avoiding the press that waited outside for any sign of drama. When Aaron entered the main council chamber, he spotted Ambassador Soraya standing with two other alien leaders. She was dressed in a flowing silver robe that shimmered under the tall lights. Her long hands moved gracefully as she spoke, her voice firm and even. Aaron waited a few feet away, ready to pass her an updated schedule. She did not look at him. She continued speaking as if he were a wall. When she finished, she handed the schedule back to one of her aides, without a glance in his direction. Aaron stepped back, saying nothing. It became clear that this was going to be the pattern. Every time Aaron approached her, she treated him like part of the background. In a way, it made his job harder. She gave instructions to her aides, who then passed them to him, even though he was standing right there. Sometimes it felt like a deliberate choice, other times like he truly was invisible. Despite the cold treatment, Aaron kept doing his work. He arranged seating plans for the next meeting, organized transport for the Valorian delegation, made sure their private quarters had the environmental controls they preferred. Valorians liked cooler air and softer lighting than humans, and he ensured that was ready before they arrived. During the afternoon, Aaron noticed tension building between the Valorians and a group from the Earth-3 cluster. The Earth-3 were known for their blunt manner of speech, and their leader, Governor Dren, had a habit of interrupting others. In a meeting about trade agreements, Dren cut off Soraya twice. Her eyes narrowed and her voice grew sharper. Aaron, standing near the edge of the room, saw the danger. If this kept up, the meeting could fall apart. When the translation devices struggled to keep up, Aaron moved quickly, adjusting the feed so both sides could hear the exact words. He repeated some phrases slowly to make sure the meaning was clear. Even with his help, the tension remained high. Soraya left the room with her aides without saying a word to Aaron. Dren followed soon after, shaking his head. Aaron stayed behind, making notes on what had gone wrong and thinking of ways to avoid a bigger conflict. Later in the day, while preparing documents for the next session, Aaron overheard two human delegates talking quietly in the hallway. "If Soraya keeps acting like this, she's going to lose the Earth-3 deal," one said. The other nodded. "She doesn't see it, but she's pushing them away." Aaron thought about that. Valorians had a strong sense of pride, but sometimes that pride could become a wall. He wondered if there was any way to help without stepping out of his role. His job was to keep the conference running, not to advise ambassadors. Still, he kept his eyes open. That evening, there was a small reception in the East Hall. Delegates mingled under hanging lights shaped like distant suns. Aaron stood near the refreshment table, watching the different species interact. Soraya was across the room, surrounded by her aides, speaking to a representative from the Orion Belt Alliance. She looked calm and confident, but Aaron noticed how the Earth-3 delegates stayed far away. When the reception ended, Aaron walked back through the quiet halls of the embassy. The lights had been dimmed, and the echoes of footsteps sounded louder. He passed the Valorian quarters and saw two aides speaking in low voices. He caught only a few words, but it was enough to know they were worried about the next day's negotiations. Aaron went to his own quarters and sat at his desk. He knew that the next day could bring a turning point. The fragile balance between the Valorians and the Earth-3 could break at any moment. And if it did, the peace conference could lose one of its most important agreements. The third day of the conference began with a tense mood. The early meetings had gone smoothly, but everyone knew that the next session would bring the Valorians and the Earth-3 face-to-face again. Security was tighter, and aides whispered quietly in the halls. The smell of strong alien spices from the dining hall mixed with the faint hum of translation devices. Aaron Blake walked into the main negotiation room early. He checked that the seats were arranged as planned, that the devices were working, and that the documents were ready. He took extra care with the Valorian side of the table, adjusting the lighting to match their preferences. He also made sure the Earth-3 section had the warmer lighting they liked. When Ambassador Soraya arrived, she moved straight to her seat without looking at Aaron. Her tall figure and silver robe drew attention from every corner of the room. Governor Dren of the Earth-3 entered soon after, his heavy steps echoing on the polished floor. His aides followed close behind, their eyes scanning the room. The meeting began with formal greetings, but the tension was obvious. Soraya spoke first, her voice calm but firm. Dren responded in short sentences, leaning forward as if ready to challenge her at any moment. Aaron stayed at the side, monitoring the translation feeds. Halfway through the discussion, the tone shifted. Dren accused the Valorians of delaying a shipment of rare minerals. Soraya denied it, saying the Valorian fleet had faced an unavoidable detour. Voices grew louder, and the translation devices struggled to keep up. Aaron stepped forward to adjust one of the devices. As he did, Soraya's chair was taken by another diplomat who had joined late, leaving her without a place to sit. In Valorian culture, sitting in a position of focus was a way to show authority. Losing that position could be seen as a sign of weakness. Soraya looked around, her eyes narrowing. Every other seat was taken. Without hesitation, she walked over to where Aaron was kneeling by the device. She lowered herself and sat directly on his lap. The room went silent for a moment. Aaron froze, feeling the weight of the moment as much as the physical weight. Soraya sat tall and continued speaking as if nothing unusual had happened. For the Valorians, this was a clear message: she would not step back from her place of authority. Aaron kept his composure. He focused on the translation device in his hands, making sure it delivered every word correctly. Inside, he was aware of the stares from around the table, but he stayed calm. If Soraya wanted him to be part of this silent display of power, he would play his role. The conversation resumed, with both sides speaking more cautiously now. It was as if the unexpected scene had broken the rhythm of the argument. Soraya used the pause to guide the discussion back to the treaty points. Dren seemed less aggressive, though his eyes still watched her closely. After nearly an hour, the meeting ended without a final agreement, but also without a complete breakdown. The delegates stood, some leaving quickly, others staying to speak in smaller groups. When Soraya rose from Aaron's lap, she did not speak to him. She simply walked away with her aides, her head held high. But Aaron noticed something different. She had not treated him like he was invisible this time. She had used him as part of her statement, and in Valorian culture, that meant something. As the room emptied, a human delegate walked over to Aaron with a grin. "You might be the first human chair in diplomatic history," he said quietly. Aaron smiled faintly, but said nothing. He knew that what had happened was more than a joke. It had been a moment of trust, or at least recognition. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Aaron thought about the strange turn of events. He had been ignored for days, treated as if he didn't exist. Then, in the middle of a tense negotiation, the ambassador had chosen him, in front of everyone, as part of her strategy. It was strange, but it also felt like the beginning of something different. The next day's sessions could go in any direction. The fragile balance between peace and conflict still hung in the air. But Aaron now knew that he had a place in the unfolding story. The morning after the unusual scene in the negotiation room, the conference center was buzzing with quiet talk. Word of Ambassador Soraya sitting on Aaron Blake had spread quickly among the delegations. Some found it strange, others amusing, and a few seemed to treat it as a calculated Valorian gesture. Aaron kept his head down, moving through his duties as usual, but he could feel the glances from both human and alien staff. Soraya's behavior toward Aaron changed slightly. She still did not greet him openly, but she no longer acted as if he was invisible. When she needed something, she gave instructions directly instead of passing them through her aides. She also allowed him to remain closer during discussions, which meant he could hear more of the private exchanges between Valorian delegates. The next session was about rewriting a section of the treaty involving resource sharing. This was a sensitive topic because it required balancing human needs with the demands of several alien worlds, including Velar and the Earth cluster. Aaron watched closely as Soraya reviewed the proposals. She spoke less sharply than before, but her tone remained firm. At one point, a miscommunication between the human delegation and the Valorians threatened to stall the entire discussion. The humans wanted flexible trade routes, while Velar preferred fixed schedules for shipments. The translator devices were not capturing the exact meaning of certain terms, and frustration began to rise. Aaron stepped forward quietly and offered a possible phrasing that worked in both human and Valorian language. Soraya paused, considering his words, then repeated them in Valorian to her aides. The reaction was positive. For the first time since the start of the conference, she gave Aaron a small nod before continuing the talks. That nod did not go unnoticed. Some of the human delegates began asking Aaron for insight into Valorian behavior. He explained what he could without overstepping his position. He knew enough about their customs to see that Soraya was testing him, perhaps deciding if he was worthy of further trust. The work was intense. Aaron attended every session involving Velar, taking notes and quietly suggesting adjustments when tensions grew. Soraya began asking him for quick opinions during breaks, often in low tones, so that others would not overhear. He gave clear and simple answers, careful not to sound like he was taking sides. One evening, Soraya invited Aaron to a private strategy meeting in the Valorian quarters. The room was dimly lit, with soft silver patterns glowing on the walls. Several Valorian aides stood nearby, watching him with interest. Soraya spoke about the importance of showing strength, while still making room for compromise. She asked Aaron what humans valued most in an agreement like this. He thought carefully before answering. Humans value fairness, but they also value trust. If they believe someone will keep their word, they are willing to be flexible. Soraya considered this, then looked to her aides. "This will be useful," she said in Valorian, though Aaron understood the meaning. For the first time, it felt like she was treating him as part of the team. The following day's negotiations reflected that change. Soraya presented a revised plan that included fixed schedules for most shipments, but allowed some flexibility during emergencies. The Earth-3 were cautious but willing to consider it, and the humans saw it as a fair middle ground. The discussion moved forward without the sharp hostility of previous days. As the meeting ended, Soraya turned to Aaron. "Stay for the debriefing," she said, her voice calm but firm. Several delegates looked surprised, but Aaron simply nodded and followed her back to the Valorian rooms. In that debriefing, Soraya asked Aaron to review the next day's talking points. She listened without interrupting as he suggested small changes to make the language more acceptable to both sides. When he finished, she gave a short, approving glance. For Aaron, the shift was clear. He was no longer just a background aide running schedules and fixing devices. He was part of the delicate process shaping the future between humans and Valorians. The road ahead was still uncertain, but now he knew that Soraya saw him not as an invisible figure but as someone who could stand beside her in the work of building peace. The final day of the conference began under a bright morning sky. The glass walls of the United World Embassy reflected the sunlight, and the city outside moved with the energy of something important about to happen. Inside, the air was quieter than usual. Everyone knew this was the day the peace treaty would be decided. Aaron Blake walked into the main hall early. He checked the lighting, the translation devices, and the arrangement of seats for the last time. The Valorian section had been prepared exactly to their liking, and the human delegation's side was ready as well. He wanted nothing to go wrong. Ambassador Soraya arrived with her usual calm presence. She no longer ignored Aaron, and when she passed him, she gave a brief nod. It was a small gesture, but it told him that their working relationship had changed since the first day. She trusted him now. Governor Dren and the Earth-3 delegates entered next, their movements steady but alert. The tension was still there, but it was quieter, controlled. Everyone seemed to understand that today was not for arguments but for solutions. The meeting began with a review of the revised treaty. Soraya spoke clearly, presenting the balance between fixed schedules and emergency flexibility for resource shipments. The humans listened carefully, asking for clarification where needed. Dren responded with fewer interruptions than before, weighing the benefits of the compromise. At one point, a technical question about enforcement came up. Both sides hesitated, unsure of the right approach. Soraya glanced toward Aaron, without standing. He suggested that the treaty include a shared monitoring team made up of both human and Valorian members. That way, no side would feel excluded from the process. The idea was simple, but it struck the right balance. The human delegation agreed quickly, and after a short discussion, the Valorians accepted it as well. Even the Earthery seemed satisfied with the proposal. As the hours passed, the discussions grew smoother. The main points were agreed upon, and only small details remained. Etienne kept his focus, ready to solve any problem before it could slow things down. Finally, the moment came. The representatives of Earth, Velar, and the Earth-3 cluster signed the peace treaty. The room filled with the quiet sound of pens on paper and the soft chime of ceremonial approval from the translation systems. A wave of relief passed through the hall. When the signing was complete, Soraya stood and addressed the room. She thanked all the delegates for their patience and effort. Then, to Aaron's surprise, she spoke directly about him. She explained that in Valorian culture, sitting on someone was not an insult, but a test of endurance and trust. By remaining calm and respectful that day, Aaron had shown qualities that Valorians valued in a partner for negotiation. The statement drew quiet murmurs from the crowd. Aaron felt every eye on him, but he stayed composed, giving a small nod in return. He understood now that the strange moment in the negotiation room had been more than it appeared. After the session ended, reporters and delegates moved quickly through the hall, capturing the moment for history. Soraya approached Aaron and told him, "Your work has helped more than you know." It was the closest she had come to openly praising him. Outside the embassy, the sky was beginning to glow with the colors of late afternoon. The treaty had been signed, and the first step toward lasting peace between these worlds had been taken. Aaron walked down the steps, hearing the distant hum of alien ships leaving the city. He thought about the path that had led here from being ignored, to being part of a silent diplomatic test, to standing alongside one of the most respected ambassadors in the galaxy. He had not been the main voice in the talks, but he had played his role well. As he looked back at the glass walls of the embassy, he knew that this was only the beginning. It would be more talks, more challenges, and more moments when quiet actions could shape the future. And he was ready for whatever came next.